All right, those of you that are at home and don't have access to the worksheets, here is how you need to set up your grid for your assignments. So remember, you are going to be doing both of these assignments. This is the one I did in the other video that I had just started. And you'll use the same size of grid for both of these, okay? Now, what you need to do is, these are 1 inch by 1 inch squares, okay? Which means we need a ruler, okay, or a tape measure. You have to be able to use units of measurement for this, okay? So, what we're going to do is, I like, just so that my box is nice and straight, I'm going to, let's see, I'm going to start here. I don't really want to set my box right on the edge here. So I'm going to actually make my first measurement at the 1/2 inch mark here, just so that I don't have to deal with my box lying right on the edge of the paper. I have a little bit of a margin. Okay, so we're going to do a 6 by 6. So we're going to go like 1 inch. So this is 0. This is my 0 mark. Don't, right now, this will make sense in a second. I don't want to move my ruler off the edge here. Or we could just maybe draw a line. How about we just do that? We'll just draw a line. Okay. So now I've got my 0 mark, which is on this ruler is the edge of my ruler. Some rulers have a gap between the edge of the ruler and the 0 mark. So you might just, if you have a different looking ruler, you might just make sure you know where your 0 mark is. So I've got, this comes in really handy when we're going to do probably another lesson over this, but this is going to come in really handy later when we are actually drawing our grids for our faces and stuff. So 0 mark's super important. That's where our first mark is going to go. 0. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. So this gives me 6 inches, which is what we need. Okay. So here I've got my end here. This is just going to be extra space over here, and we're going to erase that in a little bit. Okay. So I'm going to come up to my 6 mark, and I'm going to line my ruler up with the edge of my paper, just like what we did in perspective, so that it stays nice and straight. And then I'm just going to go ahead and draw a line all the way down. Okay. What is, oh, I don't know what that pink, oh, that's paper for my viewfinder. And then I'm going to do the same thing with my 0 mark that I did. Okay. Now, if all you have is lined paper, that's fine. It might make it a bit more confusing that all you have is lined paper, because then you might need to go over your grid with a Sharpie or a colored marker or something, colored pencil, just to give it some difference there. Okay, so now we should have, or at least our lines for most of our sides here. So this is all extra paper, blah, 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 blah. I don't want that to confuse you, so I'm going to scribble that out. This is also all extra paper, blah, 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 blah. I don't want that. This is all extra paper. I'll have a deal back down here in just a second. So, all right, this is how we started. My 0 mark's here. My 6 inches mark is here. Okay. So now I'm going to turn it this way so I can measure this side, the long sides. So now my 0 mark is at where my 6 mark was. All right. I've got it nice and straight, and then I'm just going to measure to 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, I shouldn't have to say this, but I probably should say it because it never fails. Your inch marks are the longest marks. Don't always mark over where the number is, because the number is usually set to the side of the inch mark. So make sure you are doing your longest marks, okay? So that's 6 inches. So we're going to also slide my ruler down here and measure out this side, okay? So I have my 0 mark here against where my other 0 mark was, and I'm going to go again 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, okay? Now, we're going to go just draw basically a straight line from my 2 6 marks down here. I know this is a lot of extra work, but what else can we do right now? I'm sorry. This is all extra paper now. Okay. So now on this line, we're also going to measure every inch. Now listen, guys, a lot of you are going to try to only measure 2 sides and then just try to draw a straight line across from it. But what's going to go wrong if you do that, let me show you. So this is what people do wrong. They'll draw their box, okay, they'll measure a short side, they'll measure a long side. So when they go up with the ruler, it's very, let's pretend like this is nice and straight. It's very easy for you to think you have it straight, but it's not. And maybe it's slightly slanted this way and it goes in more narrow, or maybe on this one it goes out wider. You don't have that guide mark opposite of it, so therefore it doesn't stay straight and correct. So you have to have marks on all 4 sides. Okay. So now as you're drawing it, make sure your ruler doesn't move on you. That does tend to happen. Put a bunch of pressure on the ruler. Okay. If you have to stand up and put all of your upper body weight on it, do it. That's fine. I do that a lot too. Okay. So then you're going to match up your marks and draw. Now, for this assignment, if it's slightly off, probably not a big deal. The main point of doing this is to learn how to grid, like how to use the gridding system when we're drawing. However, if your grid is messed up, it's going to be a fail. But when we start doing our project, it is going to be way more imperative that your grid is correct. What tends to happen when kids start doing this step is their eyes kind of play tricks on them, and they think that their grid is like that, their measurements don't line up. Here's the trick. If you've ever, some of you might be familiar with the phrase measure twice, cut once. That's more of a term for, I think, what carpenters use, but you double check your measurements before you draw your lines. But carpenters is more or less before you cut your wood. But when we're doing our project, we are going to definitely want to measure our stuff twice before we do it. And then as long as your measurements are correct, then you're fine. It's just your eyes playing tricks on you. So like right now, I feel like my eyes are playing tricks on me, but it's correct. So I feel like my first column here is more narrow at the top than it is at the bottom, but it's not. It's correct. They're all 1 inch apart. They all line up with my 0 mark. That 0 mark is really important. So it's just my eyes playing tricks on me. So again, that could be what's going on with you if you feel like that. So double check your measurements before you draw your lines, especially on your project. Not as big of a deal on this assignment, just because we're trying to just learn how to draw our picture. So now, just like in the other one, you pull up the image. You won't really be able to number off your picture, I suppose, on your grid. But you might give it a go. You might, freeze my camera, pause it. You could kind of see my numbers and letters, and then you could do the same thing here, or on the other video where I actually go through the lesson. EF. And then you just kind of start your drawing on this, okay? Now, since you have this grid drawn once, you could probably just retrace this on another piece of paper for your line. You probably shouldn't have to freehand it again, just unless you want to. So, anyways, make sure you upload a picture of your grid drawing. You don't need to upload a picture of something like this because you don't have that. So just upload a picture of both your grid lion and your grid gorilla, like what you've drawn. And again, make sure you have this because I will be checking for that. So email me if you guys have any questions.